let them take over. And a quick note that we are recording the webinar, so your faces won't be shown at any point, but we're recording it so that we can post it on our website. So Brianna, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Brianna Franklin. I'm the undergraduate coordinator for biology. So hopefully a lot of you here got the invitation from me to be here. So thank you so much for coming. Just really quickly, please, for this presentation, at the end, we'll be doing a Q&A. So use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're gonna keep the chat closed just so we can kind of keep everything in the Q&A. So yeah, I will pass it on to Connie.
Wonderful. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Connie Calderon Jensen. I'm the Associate Director of the Latinx Center of Excellence at UCSF. And I work with all of our programs that are part of our Latinx Center of Excellence. And I have the good fortune to work with my two colleagues, Tomas Magana and Kalechi. I won't destroy your name, my friend. I love you, but you know, I still can't pronounce it correctly. And that's my bad. But we'll be presenting to you in a little bit. So Kalechi, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Sure thing. So I'm Dr. Kalechi Wezuke. I'm the Assistant Director for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Partnerships here at San Francisco State with the SF Build program. So I am around, at least virtually, on campus for those of you that would like to check in, and looking forward to connecting with you all, sharing some important information, and hopefully answering all of the questions that you have. So congratulations on being here and showing up today and taking stock in your futures.
And Tomas.
Hello, greetings everybody. My name is Dr. Tomas Magana. I am a community-based pediatrician at a very large federally qualified health center in the East Bay, but I also serve as the director of the Aspiring Physicians Program at San Francisco State University, part of the UCSF Latinx Center of Excellence. And I work with my incredible partners here to provide support and mentorship to our pre-health, pre-medical students. So I look forward to talking with you today.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started. And Brianna, is that showing up? It is. Okay, so Tomas, I'll go ahead and forward through the presentation so you can get started, okay? Oops. There we go.
Okay, so I'm trying to do this managing of two different screens. So forgive me if it feels like I'm a little confused and looking off in the air. But it is the nature of trying to figure this out. In any case, let me review quickly what the objectives are of our session today, and really the primary objective is to demystify this wonderful thing called the AMCAS application process to medical school. But we're going to be covering some main kind of themes and points. Number one, we really want you to leave here understanding the different sections of the AMCAS application process. And we're going to go into somewhat detail around that and definitely provide you with some resources. Secondly, we want to help you identify the main parts of your statement of purpose, which is one of the most critical elements of identifying yourself uniquely amongst thousands of applicants who are applying for coveted spots in medical school. Third, we want to make sure that you really develop a realistic timeline for AMCAS and be very thoughtful and mindful in your approach so that it doesn't become something that feels rushed and inauthentic to who you are and your own personal journey. And then, as I have already mentioned, we want to make sure that you have access to some free AMCAS resources that are going to be really important sources of information and a lot of students, frankly, aren't aware of. So on that note, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Connie.
Okay, so one of the first things I ask students to do when they're thinking about applying to medical school is to make sure that they go on the AAMC website. Now, the website is divided into sections for pre-med students, for medical students, for residents, And it really explains in quite a bit of detail the types of resources that they have available to help you navigate applying to medical school, and then when you're in medical school, getting ready to do your residency applications. You want to make sure that you review the manual, the videos, and the tutorials that apply to the year that you will be applying. Now, you also need to remember that medical school applications open normally online on June 1st. So, but you don't want to wait until June 1st to start working on your application. You want to be doing that now so that you can cut and paste your application into the online application once that is open. So again, you can be working on your application now, but you actually can't open and submit the AMCAS until after June 1st. You want to give yourself plenty of time. You want to make sure that you calculate your science GPA, which is considered the BCPM, biology, chemistry, physics, and math. And then you want to calculate your overall GPA. And then you want to try to get as close to or above a 3.0 in both of those calculations. I've put there the link to one of the GPA calculators. There's lots of them that you can Google. You can go to the AAMC website and use what's there. I know that Kalechi often has one that we give to the students, but it's very important for you to see where you are academically before you decide to apply to medical school, because if your GPA isn't where it should be, then maybe you need to consider taking a post-bac program. And then that's a whole nother workshop that we can talk about later. When you are ready to apply, you also want to make sure that you order all of your college transcripts. And that includes if you did any summer programs as a college student, either at a community college or another country, all of your transcripts need to be included. You will also include letters of recommendation, and it's important for you to know how many letters you should have kind of in your bank of letters of recommendation. And then depending on the schools you're going to be applying to, you want to see what that mix looks like. So for example, how many science letters, is there a community letter, or is there a letter from a non-science faculty member that needs to be included? So these are all things that you need to take into consideration. And then you want to start thinking about your narrative. What are you going to include in your statement of purpose? Okay. Now, I want you to be able to take a look at what the application actually looks like when you're getting ready to submit it. This is the biographical information. When you open up an account with the AAMC, and you normally do that when you're getting ready to apply to take the MCAT, you're going to get a AAMC ID, which is right up here. That's going to be the same ID you got from the MCAT. It's the ID that will carry you through getting into medical school, okay? So all of this information is required for you to give. Now, on the biographical information here on the bottom, notice that it says racial self-identification, and then it says ethnic self-identification. You can put, not applicable, or you can leave that empty, whatever you want to do. Notice that, the AAMC does not consider being a Latinx as a racial identity. That is considered an ethnic identity, okay? And then if you grew up speaking another language and maybe you no longer feel proficient in it, you should still include it. You could put here that you always spoke Spanish as a child, but your proficiency level isn't quite what it used to be. So you should make sure that you fill that completely. Here's more information that they're going to ask about your demographics. This information here should be about your childhood residence. So If you grew up in the Central Valley, but now you live in San Francisco, this information here would be about the Central Valley, okay? And then this is self-reported information. They're not looking at your tax records or anything like that, but they do want to know how many people were in your household, again, when you were growing up before you went to college. If you had to work while you were in high school to help your family financially, they want to know that. And then if you received a Pell Grant as an undergraduate, and then also how did you pay for college? Now this should total 100%, but you don't have to be precise. Nobody is going to be checking. They just want to see how you paid for college. There is a section here for a disadvantage statement. Now, disadvantage, just like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. So this is an opportunity for you to talk about why you feel you overcame disadvantages, what those disadvantages were. This is only 1325 characters, and that includes punctuation. So it's a very factual, short description about what you feel your disadvantage was, and maybe a sentence or two about how you overcame it and how it helped you persevere and be a stronger student. This is all of your college information. Again, if you took community college classes in the summer, or if you went to a different campus for a year and then came to your campus, you have to include all of those courses. Even if you got, an incomplete, because you received units. And so it's important for you to get a copy of your transcript. It doesn't have to be the official transcript. You can have an unofficial transcript for yourself so that you can start filling this out. You're going to put in your grades, and of course, you're going to put in the hours and the units. You don't have to calculate the grade, okay? You're just putting the grade that goes in from your transcript. This area of verification, that is done at the AAMC. They're going to look at your classes that you've entered, the grades and the units. They're going to look at your official transcript, which is something that gets sent to them, and they're going to make sure that they match. Okay, this is why I make sure that students put their courses exactly as they are on your transcript. If they don't match, you don't get verified. And if you don't get verified, your application does not go to the medical schools you want to see your application, which means that now your application is going to be behind, okay? And we'll talk about timing later. When you get verified, the GPA information, both the BCPM and overall, get calculated for you. You get a message that your application has been verified, and then your application gets sent out to all the campuses that you're interested in attending. This is the activities section of the AMCAS. You get to write about up to 15 activities, and the activities have a variety of titles. So there's volunteer activities, there are activities for veterans, there are hobbies, there are presentations and publications. What's important to note here is that more doesn't mean that it's better. These activities should be things that make you who you are, that make you proud of being involved in these activities, and they don't all have to be about medicine. Medical schools want well-rounded people, okay? And that we have a whole other workshop just working on activities. But basically, your limit is 700 characters. Again, a character means that they are including punctuation. That's very, very small. Basically, you want to talk about what you did. That gives you maybe three sentences, why you did it and who the organization is. Okay, so really it's maybe 5-6 sentences max. Very short, very sweet. Of those activities, let's say you decide you have 15 really strong activities. Of those 15, you get to select 3 that you consider the most significant. Now, these are the most significant to you. Remember that the application is about you. It's not about who you think the medical schools want to read about, but actually you. So you get to describe why these 3 activities are so significant to you with an extra 1,325 characters. And so now you get to paint a picture about what you did in that activity and why you feel it has really molded you or prepared you to be in medical school. And I'm going to pass it on to Kelechi.
All right, thank you, my dear. So the personal statement, as you can see in this big red kaboom, start writing early, right? This is one of the first things that we always tell people. So your personal statement is really something that's going to be important to you. This is your story, right? This is your narrative, and there's no greater author than yourself when it comes to telling your story. And so we all have a story to tell. It's just a matter of figuring it out how you really are going to be able to craft this story and to express it in a way that's meaningful to you and that's really, really compelling to really support the rest of your application. And so I really just want to make a note about this too. The personal statement is just one of many components to your application. And I know sometimes people can really feel a lot of anxiety, and understandably so, but remember, it's just one component, and probably the component that you have the greatest control over in terms of really curating it for yourself and getting it to a point to where you feel really satisfied. And so there are typically 3 main things that we are looking for, that admissions committees are going to be looking for. And so one of the first questions is essentially, who are you? Right? What was your background like? What is your family? What is the community, the education that you've had? Essentially, who is the person that is presenting themselves as we read this application? How did you get to be where you are? And sharing the story about how that came to be. Then they want to hear about, ultimately, why do you want to pursue a career in medicine? Okay, was there something in particular that happened to you? Was there some experience within your family member, right? Or a special person, a place, or a thing that happened? And ultimately, there are a lot of students that I've worked with over the course of the years that whenever you ask them why medicine, right? Typically the response is, surprise, I want to help people. Where there are 1,000,001 amazing professions that exist where you can actually help people. So it's going to require a little bit deeper digging than helping people when you are expressing, why it is that you want to be able to pursue medicine. And so all of your different experiences are really going to come into play that are really going to help you shine the light on how you have explored exactly the career of medicine. And so that's the final component, right? What have you done to actually explore medicine as a career? Because it's not enough to say, when you were a kid, maybe you went to the doctor and you liked the white coats, right? I think we all can relate to some of those stories. That's maybe a wonderful little beginning, but then what did you do beyond that to really explore, right? What coursework did you take? What different volunteer opportunities did you engage in? What type of research work or programs? And again, I will say that a lot of times people think that it has to be very, very explicit to medicine, like volunteering in a hospital or something. That is not always the case. There are many different ways that you can explore what medicine is or gain exposure to what medicine is. That can include, of course, volunteering and clinical side, but can also very much include different types of research that you have done or different types of people that you've been able to shadow and engaged with and have been able to see the connectivity to a career in medicine and why that's personal and meaningful for you. So ultimately, we're asking you to brainstorm, right? Create an outline. You're going to have a bajillion and one drafts. You're going to write until you can't write anymore. And then you're probably still going to feel like, I could have probably done something else, but this is it, right? The point is just to really get comfortable with this process, get comfortable really jumping headfirst into your own story and into your own narrative. And for some people, they don't really take the opportunity to do that. And so wherever you are in your educational journey right now, I really can't emphasize enough, that it is never too early to start writing. So even if you are a freshman or a sophomore, you can open up a Word document that says personal statement, and you can just start jotting down things as they come to mind for you. Don't be afraid of really, going deep, sharing experiences that were really, really meaningful to you, right? In terms of being instrumental to wanting to become a pediatrician, but ultimately becoming the person that you are today, right? Because these are the stories that are really going to resonate with people when they read them. Remember that you're going to be one of either hundreds or thousands, literally, of applications that committee members may come across in any given application cycle. And so there's going to be a ton of people with 4.0 GPAs, a ton of people with, really high MCAT scores, but it's going to be that deeper story. So even think about yourself. What are some of the things and the experiences and some of the people that you have come across? What was it about their stories that still resonate with you to this day? And so as you're thinking about your own personal statement, keep that in mind, because those are the things that really capture people's attention. It's the narrative, it's the story behind it. And then ultimately, you should only really write about things that you're going to feel comfortable enough discussing in an interview. Essentially, anything that's in your application is fair game when it comes to the interview process. So if there's a particular experience that maybe you're still trying to grapple with and deal with, and you would not necessarily feel comfortable discussing openly during the interview, you may consider whether or not you really want to include that as part of your personal statement. So next up is the letters of recommendation. Again, these are really, really crucial. Really, really crucial. Okay, so meet with your professors early and often so they can get to know you. I understand in the world of virtual learning, this is really challenging, right? It's challenging pre-COVID, right? But again, take the time to attend office hours just to help you with the coursework, right? But it also does provide you with an additional opportunity to engage your professors and your instructors so that you're someone who becomes memorable. And again, understand that the connection that you are making with professors, it doesn't have to just strictly be about the courses and the classwork, right? You can ask them questions about, how they came to be in their journey, right? I can guarantee you that some of your professors were probably pre-med students at some point in time, right? And so just talking to them about their journeys is another way to get to know who they are. We always recommend that you ask your letter writer to write, if they can write a strong letter of recommendation, literally using those words, right? Do not assume that if they say yes, that they're going to write you a strong letter, because a kiss of death in an application is a really poor letter of recommendation. And that's the last thing that you want in your file. I've heard horror stories. So word to all of you wise students out there, be clear about what you want from them. Ultimately, you're not required to use the letter service, which some universities have at their institution. You can use the AAMC letter service, which is completely free to use. So just know that you have that as an additional option or resource for you. And then all of the letters are ultimately sent to the AAMC. You typically will not need more than 5 letters. Each school will be different in terms of what they ask for, what they require or recommend. And then ultimately there's something called a committee letter or a committee packet. That is the equivalent of 1 letter, even if there are multiple writers on that particular letter. So again, just keep that in mind. So when you are going through your actual application process, you should make sure that you assign your letters to specific medical schools before you complete your application, okay? So important to remember. Then, quick recap, right? The MCAS is this huge honker of an application process, many different components, but there's gonna be your biographical data, which Connie talked about. So again, just a little bit about who you are and who your background. Then there's the disadvantage statement. You have 1325 characters, okay? Not words, characters. So that includes those little spaces. So for those of you that like to try to cheat like me with margins and teeny font and all that, not gonna work here, okay? They want the characters. And this is really where you get to talk about, as Connie said, it's really a personal decision whether or not you choose to select disadvantage. And so this can really talk about whether or not you feel you were maybe socially, economically, or educationally disadvantaged, whether or not you grew up in a neighborhood that was an underserved area, right? Maybe you lived in a physician shortage area. And so that really influenced kind of your experience with the healthcare system and ultimately how you envision yourself in terms of being a provider and where you want to practice. So all those types of things can go into the disadvantage statements. You're going to need all of your college courses, all of the units, and all of the grades. So my advice to you right now, get a nice little folder. If you've gone to community colleges and you've gone to different summer school programs because you're really ambitious, you want to just get all of those now and have them ready and waiting so that you are not scrambling down the line to try to go back and figure out, where did I take that course again? Oh my gosh, you know, how do I order this transcript? So if you just do it early, that's one less thing that you have to worry about when you're actually filling out the application. Your personal statement, as we had mentioned, it's again 5,300 characters, so you have a little bit more room, but again, it's really not a lot of space. So you're gonna have to kind of figure out the things that are really, really monumental that you really, really want to lead with. So consider, you know, if your whole life is your movie, your personal statement is the trailer, what's gonna be that 2 minutes, right? That's really gonna make the person want to learn more about you and invite you in for an interview. And then you're gonna get an opportunity to talk about experiences. 15, right, in total, and then really be able to expound upon 3 that have been the most meaningful for you. And then your letters of recommendation. Again, start early, build those relationships early when you are asking people for these letters of recommendation. And please, let me just, from personal, my pet peeves, do not ask me for a letter of recommendation the week before your application is due. Don't do it. Right, I love, you know, supporting students, but when I get those emails, I'm like, help me help you. I want to love you, but help me help you. So again, as much notice as you can give people will be greatly appreciated. I have some of my mentees who are applying this summer and they've asked me as early as January. Okay, so just to give you a timeline, they're not submitting until June, but they asked me in January, so that's 6 months. And then again, all of your transcripts, this includes any summer courses that you may have taken anywhere that is beyond high school, so any college institution. I think I'm passing it off to my friend. Oh no, this is me, just kidding. I'm talking a lot, y'all. Okay. Education timeline. So this timeline, we're basing it on someone who's looking to apply 2 years before applying. And I think I saw at least one person in the Q&A ask when they should apply if they want to start medical school by a certain time. Typically, whatever fall semester you want to begin medical school, you need to apply the summer the year before. Okay, so that's the way it goes. It takes a whole year and 3 months essentially to apply to medical school. So keep that in mind. So some of the things that we recommend that you do, again, 2 years before applying. We understand that people are on different time lengths. Some people may apply while they're still in undergrad because they're going to go straight through. Other students are going to maybe take a gap year or some additional time in between. Whatever works for you is totally fine. But we really, really suggest that you make sure that you meet with, we have in parentheses, your pre-health advisor. We understand different people can wear those hats for you, but make sure that you are speaking to someone who is knowledgeable about the medical school process and that you are speaking to someone who's not going to just sort of stand there as a gatekeeper, but will really be a supporter of you and your application process, right? So again, you want to think about, are you really, really on time to completing all of your med school requirements? The AAMC website, the MSAR website, these are all going to be crucial resources. You should have them bookmarked. If you are a pre-med student, these are all the websites you should have bookmarked, and we'll share them, I think, again at the end, because they provide a ton of resources and information. So talk about your AMCAS GPA, talk about the timeline. Are you going to take a gap year or not? When is the best time to take the MCAT? Typically, we recommend that people take the MCAT with enough time to get their scores back before they actually submit their application. So that would mean anywhere in that spring area before the summer of when you're going to apply. Make sure that you look into the fee assistance program because that will help you to pay for your medical school application process. It is not a cheap process, so keep that in mind as well. And then it's never too early also to start creating your list of potential medical schools that you want to apply to. All right, and MSAR has a nice little database on that. In terms of your activities, right, we want to make sure that you are engaging in activities that are really, really meaningful to you, ways that really help you to identify, continue, or pursue and extend your role as a leader on campus and ultimately into the health field. If there are pre-health organizations on campus, that's really amazing for you to look into. We'll share a couple of organizations at the end of the presentation that you should look into as an undergraduate for pre-med students. Again, think about who are you going to want to write these letters of recommendation for you. We cannot overemphasize that. And then for many of us, we know that we have to work during undergrad, right? So again, whenever possible, if one, you have a really strong interest in clinical research experiences or medically related experiences, and you can participate in them either by way of an internship or by volunteering, we really, really strongly recommend that you do that as well. Try to take a leadership role. Right? If you are involved in a student organization and maybe you've been a lay member for a few years, maybe try applying for a board position in one of those organizations and really try to step up your leadership game. And then always review the MSAR database. There are a ton, there's a ton, it might be information overload. So I'm telling you to start early so you can really, really pace yourself in this process. And then how does the MCAS work? So the MCAS is this sort of a singular application portal where you actually apply through it, and then they ultimately sort of send off your application. So the first step is that you work on your application, you complete your application, and you submit it online. Again, making sure that you've checked out the fee assistance programs, you pay the fee that are associated with that. Then the next step is that the MCAS will process your application or your application, excuse me. It usually takes about 4 to 6 weeks to verify your application. So again, keeping all of this in mind, this is why we really recommend for people to apply as early as possible, because from the day that you hit submit until the day that they verify, it could be an additional 4 to 6 weeks. Again, and as Connie talked about, it's really, really important to enter all of your grades exactly as they are in your transcript so you don't delay that process. And then the third part is that your application is then, after it's verified, is distributed and sent out to all of the schools that you have designated. And then the schools will ultimately receive that and then begin their process of inviting you over for secondaries, followed by interviews. So now I am passing the baton.
All right, this is where I'll step in, and my part's going to be relatively brief because the meat of the matter has already been discussed by my colleagues here, but just a few points to remember for you all. Remember, there are no right answers when you are filling out these questions. The right answer is that which is most authentic to you, your story, your perspectives, your desires, your values. Do not write something or insert something that is in there because you think it's going to sound good, or it's something that you read from an example template of the best statement or examples of the best templates. I've reviewed many applications over the years, guys, and it's really clear those which are clearly just kind of scripted and inauthentic because there is no central theme throughout the application. Statements are kind of all over the place and responses are. And then there are those which you can feel are truly authentic to the individual because they are highlighted by experiences and activities within the statement itself. So please write which that is most resonant with your lived experience. Again, to remember, and related to that, be honest and genuine in all of your written statements, and really begins, as Kelechi and Connie have stated over and over again, start writing for the various sections of the AMCAS early. Don't procrastinate and don't rush this because that's just not doing you a true service to this process. and begin journaling thoughts and ideas which you would like to reflect upon within your statements and different elements. When you are writing things and you're asking people to review and comment, make sure that you ask those folks who you trust, right? Because for some of you, you may be disclosing some fairly personal story and narrative, and you want to make sure that that is shared with those, frankly, who've earned the right to see that information, but also those who just won't kind of sugarcoat it if you're not being authentically yourself, right? You want people to be honest with you and say, I'm not seeing you in this, or rather saying, you know what, you got too much in here. I'm not following the themes or the trends of what's going on. So make sure that you ask a number of different people to review it, and people who kind of reflect different experiences and roles and positions. And then also remember that once you submit your application, the opportunity to edit or make changes is extremely limited. So make sure that you've done all the appropriate edits and revisions prior to pushing that button and submitting, because you don't want to throw in something that is not fully you. Just in terms of ongoing help with your application, because this is just a moment of time that we're offering you stuff. Some of the answers to your questions, many of which are universal by many pre-med applicants, are available on the AAMC website. So please check out that link, see some of their frequently asked questions and some of the responses, and I think you'll find that extremely helpful. Also, a reminder to follow AMCAS on Twitter and YouTube at that particular, what do you call it, hashtag, whatever that term is. Whatever that is, yeah. Because I think that's a great source of information and resources that comes up. The best thing you can do is keep abreast and up to date on information as it comes out, right? Be an informed applicant around this. That will only empower you to submit the best application possible. And then, of course, if there are questions, email. You can email directly AMCAS, including your ID number if you've already submitted one because you've started the application process. Other useful sites are the Aspiring Docs link, personal stories from medical students that have some perhaps anecdotal stories and some information. The AMSAR page, which is information about medical schools. And then, of course, there's the FAP one, which is important financial aid information. There's some additional resources on the AAMC website, particularly their pre-med section. Join the social conversation, be part of the ongoing dialogue. That is really important. And then also remember that there are incredible organizations out there, student organizations that can offer a wealth of resources and opportunities. So there's the Student National Medical Association. That's their link there. The Latino Medical Student Association, TAMSA, and as well as Mi Mentor. Obviously, some of these organizations are targeting specific students from particular backgrounds, but that does not mean that any student from any background cannot take advantage of the resources they offer. Some of these programs specifically provide mentorship, like the Mi Mentor program, with healthcare providers and physicians in the field. So do some exploration, get the information, and then create the linkages for yourself. And a reminder that what your plan, what you visualize as kind of your trajectory and journey into medical school may not necessarily pan out to what it actually becomes. What we often think is kind of a direct line towards it is often filled with gaps and obstacles and hills and valleys and so forth. Life is life. And frankly, it's the bottom graph that actually makes you a much more interesting applicant in the long run. Remember, medical school is about taking care of human beings, and you're going to be dealing as a physician with the complexity of human nature. And so the more experience you have underneath your belt to deal with people from different backgrounds in different situations, the more you can pull from your own narrative, the challenges and the things you've surmounted and the lessons you've learned, that will only make you a better provider. So be patient with the process. Be kind with yourself. Take the time you need. You do not need to apply to medical school right out of college. And in fact, there is tremendous value for taking time between medical school and college. I actually started medical school when I was 27 years old because I took the time between graduating to pursue other interests, a master's degree, work for a couple of years, do volunteer work, travel abroad. That only made me a richer applicant when I was talking about my statement and actually interviewing in medical school. So on that note, I'm gonna stop and we're gonna attend to the numerous questions that have come up in the chat and anybody who also wants to talk. Brianna, do you wanna?
Thank you so much, Tomas.
Yeah, I will facilitate the questions. So I'll read them off to you guys. And then for everyone attending, if you would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand and I will unmute you. But we will start with the questions in the Q&A. First question, can we get LORs, letters of recommendation, from a graduate student professor?
So normally what medical schools want to see are letters from faculty. So a graduate student instructor can help a faculty member write a letter of recommendation, but it should be signed by the faculty member. It can be signed by both, but there should be a faculty member involved in that.
Okay, next question. Is credit grade accepted at a medical school?
Kelechi, I'm not sure I understand that question.
Yeah, I think if they, if they are, I'm assuming if the person takes the class pass, no pass. So that's what I'm assuming. The person can follow up if that's not what they meant by that. It depends on the course. Required courses, the actual pre-med requirements, so the year of biology, the year of chemistry, the year of physics, the year of, what am I forgetting?
That's it.
Is that it? Those are all, those must be for a letter grade. And I'm not aware of any medical schools that do not require those to be letter grades right now. Again, always check though with the unique school, but as an overarching requirement, those actual courses that are the required courses are to be taken for a letter grade.
Although, you know, all classes, whether you took them for a letter grade, whether you failed, whether you withdrew, if they are on your transcript, they must be in your AMCAS. If your transcript has a class that you retook, so you failed the first one and then you retook it and you got an A and you decide to, in your AMCAS, only report that you got an A, remember that that fail is on your transcript. And so guess what happens? You don't get verified and now your application gets sent back to you and you're at the bottom of the pile, basically. That's why it's so important that you look at your transcripts before you start this process. And if you have any questions, to talk to your registrar to get things cleaned up. If there's something that is not right, that you feel is not right, then you have time to work with a registrar to make sure that that gets cleaned up.
Yeah. And I think related to that, I think I saw someone ask about an art class in the summer for fun. If you submit those transcripts to AMCAS, yep, all the fun classes, they should be, anything that's submitted to AMCAS should also be in your actual application, or else, as Connie said, it's going to cause a delay in the verification process.
Let me make a note as somebody who has reviewed applications, right? And the notion of transcript. You guys have to kind of understand that when we're looking at transcripts in your record, we're not just looking at the GPA or the grade itself, we're also looking at the profile of your transcript, meaning we're looking at kind of the units of credits you're taking within a particular semester. We're looking at the load that you're taking. We're looking at the trends over time of how your grades look. We're looking at dips. We're looking at there's multiple withdrawals in a particular semester. We're trying to understand how it is that you're performing in your undergraduate career. Look, the main purpose of why medical schools have you do these requirements and do these grades is we want to make sure that you have proved to the medical school admissions committee that you have the ability to do well in a rigorous science program, right? And so there's a big difference, right, between doing well within a semester, say you're taking 12 units and you're doing fairly well, versus one biology class a summer and you get an A in that. Well, that's important and that looks real, that's good. It'll help your GPA. But what it's showing me is, yeah, if you take one science class in one semester, you can get an A. But if you're doing 3 at a time and you're getting Ds, then can you handle the rigor of medical school? So it's important to think how you space out your classes over the course of your undergraduate career. If you know that you're coming from a high school program that didn't prepare you well, you probably don't want to do chemistry, biology in the same semester, because you want to show that you can do well within a semester, okay? So organizing your schedule is really important as you start on this journey towards medical school, and making sure you space it out well and that you're loading your credits in your classes, balancing them very, very, very mindfully.
Yeah, and then to kind of piggyback on that, when you look at your transcripts and you do your GPA calculator, the other thing you want to see is an upward trend, because medical schools will look, and they know that many of us are, that our first generation college students have a really hard time acclimating to being on our own, being away from our families, learning how to study for college, which is very different from how we studied in high school. And so those first couple of years may be a little lower, but they want to see that the second semester of your second year is getting better, and that junior year is better, and that your senior year is better. They don't want to see a dip in your senior year. And if you're noticing that you have that dip, then you need to think about, okay, maybe I need a post-bac program. Maybe I need to do a master's degree in order to show that upward trend. So that's a term that I want you to internalize. I need an upward trend, okay? Don't worry so much about if you didn't get the 4.0 your first couple of years. You want to think about having that upward trend going forward.
And if you see yourself struggling, please reach out for assistance and support. One of the most common and universal challenges, particularly that I have seen, particularly with first generation students, and this was my own personal experience being a first generation, is we often think we can manage this on our own, right? And we'll just push through it and not reach out for help. Mainly, number one, because there may be some shame around that, or the sense of self-sufficiency, I can manage this, I always have on my own, or there's ignorance around what resources there are. So inform yourselves and make sure that that happens, okay? You don't want, it's much easier to do prevention than it is to try to remedy past mistakes, because as Connie has said, those grades, even if you do remake them and do better the second time around, those grades still remain a part of your record. And medical school reviewers are going to see that D and want to know what, it may or may not bias them.
Yeah. Brianna, I saw there was a question about the application timeline, right? So medical school applications open June 1st, okay? Now, they stay open, the rest of that year. But if you want your application to have the best chance of being evaluated and of you getting a secondary and then getting an interview, you should really aim for submitting your application between June 1st and the 4th of July holiday, okay? For those students who take an MCAT in June, that means you're not getting your score back until mid-July, and that's considered late to turn in your applications, particularly in the California schools, okay? And we think that as California residents, you should be applying to all, if not most, of the California schools, for sure. So please take that into consideration. Medical schools say that they have rolling admissions, but the fact of the matter is that all schools are competitive, and they are going to send secondaries out and then base interviews on how students did on those secondaries. And if people can start getting interviews as early as October. And if your application isn't being reviewed until October, that puts you at an incredible disadvantage. And in my experience working with students on their medical school applications, it is a very stressful activity. So if you are doing your due diligence and you're working hard at putting your application together, you want to make sure that you give yourself the best opportunity to have a successful application. And that means getting it submitted before the 4th of July holiday. Okay, that means that you want to take the MCAT. I think someone else mentioned, why should I take the MCAT? If you're able to take the MCAT in May and you get your scores back in June and you're happy with your score, then you're ready to submit, right? Because you've already done your application. All you have to do is copy and paste it, enter your MCAT score and submit. However, if you take it in May and you get your scores in June, and you feel like you need to retake it because you scored 500, then you really don't have time to submit it before the middle of July, right? So you need to take that into consideration. Maybe you need to take the MCAT sooner so that if you do have to retake it, then you have your scores in hand to submit your application. There are a few students who decide that they're going to submit their AMCAS blind. They've taken the MCAT, they feel really good about it, and they hit submit because they are sure that their MCAT score is going to be what they want. And then they get their MCAT score back, and guess what? Medical schools get to see that MCAT score. And now they have a data point. You scored a 500. Let's just say you don't get secondaries, you don't get an interview. Now you're going to have to reapply, and now you're going to have to really increase that score to be competitive. So again, applying to medical school is not a short race. You do not have to apply. I do not recommend that you apply to medical school when you're still a senior in college. If you're going to be a super senior, a second year senior, maybe that works, but not if you're a senior. It takes a lot of time. You have to graduate strong from college first and foremost. Okay, so let's concentrate on that, and then let's apply to medical school. You should only apply when you're ready. And that means that you are happy with your MCAT score. And by happy, I mean, if you get a 505, you are competitive in California. If you get above a 500, you are competitive in other states. There are lots of wonderful medical schools in this country. And the great thing is that it doesn't matter which one you attend, because when you graduate, what do you get, Tomas?
You still get an MD.
That's right. You are still a doctor, my friend.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Connie, on that note, let me just also add something with regard to the MCATs. I've had a number of students who I've mentored who said, you know what, I'm going to take the MCAT, even though I'm not really feel I'm prepared, because I just want to see how I do on it, right? Please don't do that. Don't use that as a gauge to whether or not you have to study more, or whether or not you think you might as well, I'll let that decide whether or not I apply. As Connie said, that score goes on your record, and medical schools will see that. So if you go in to do an MCAT just because you want to see where you are and what you need to do, that is the worst thing you can do, please. One of the worst things you can do. Do practice MCATs if that's where you want to gauge where you need to improve or to kind of assess your status. But don't use the formal MCAT as a gauge on whether or not you're ready to apply to medical school or not, if you're not good in the other areas and ready in the other areas.
Okay, Brianna, what's the next question?
All right, so we're gonna go to Gabriela Alvarez. They have their hand raised. So Gabriela, I will allow you to talk if you want to ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And yeah, I applied last cycle go to the medical school, actually to MD PhD programs. Unfortunately, I did not get any interviews, so I really need to work on my application even more. And I know for the personal statements, I have to pretty much rewrite everything. I cannot reuse information that I already wrote. So I was wondering what would be your recommendation for me to go about writing my personal statement again? And maybe also working on my activity section, because I'm actually very lost, and I thought I had a strong statement. I actually I asked students in MD PhD program review, my professors, so I'm just lost. I don't know where to start and what I can do better. Yeah, any suggestion would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Well, Gabriela, congratulations. You know, MD PhDs are incredibly difficult. So I think that it's wonderful that, that you're trying to go on that path. And remember that you not being admitted in this cycle, you can still get, you know, an interview in this cycle. But if you think that this cycle is over for you, you don't have to begin from scratch. Your personal statement has information about you that's valuable. Not getting into medical school does not mean that your experiences and that your journey doesn't have value. It does. But there are always ways to improve what we are sharing with the schools. So my recommendation to you is to set up an appointment with your mentors, with the faculty that you've been working with, that you've been doing research with, and look at your application to see where you can improve that. I think that, you know, and also what schools you applied to, because sometimes it's, you know, it's a matter of did we not have enough schools in the mix to make sure that you would be successful? So what's important as a reapplicant, whether it's an MD, PhD, or a medical student applicant, is that you not reapply immediately. Schools want to see that you have looked at your application, that you have reflected upon areas of growth that you needed to work on, and that then you worked on them for a year, right? And then you reapplied. So I'm sure that there's somebody on campus, Kalechi or Tomas, that would be willing to speak to you, and we can absolutely look through your application and help you figure out your next steps. But anybody who applies is courageous, and it's an important first step on our journey. Sometimes we fall and then we brush ourselves off. We mourn the process. We can be sad, we've earned it. And then you learn from your application how you can be better.
Thank you so much. I'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Gabriela, I feel like we've met before. I've seen you before. I don't know if you work at UCSF and you did an amazing job on a webinar that I was on, but you look really familiar. Yeah, I'm happy to follow up. Definitely, you're not throwing everything out and starting all over again. And as Connie stated, just because things didn't pan out this round does not mean that you are not a strong applicant or have a strong application. You know, it might just be a matter of trying to tweak it a little bit more to the programs that you are applying to, and spending a little bit more time engaging with some of the people on campus or who have gone through these programs who are a little bit more familiar with them. So again, I think you have a very unique case, so I'm happy to talk a little bit more offline.
Thank you so much.
Next, Brianna.
Okay, next question. Do we need certain clinical hours to apply to medical school?
No, you do not. You don't have to have clinical hours. You don't have to have research experience. But I will tell you that if you say you want to give back to your community, and your community is the Central Valley, or your community is an underserved inner city, you better have some experiences in those areas before you say something like that, okay? So your experiences are kind of the window to who you are as a whole person that the committee is looking at, right? That is where they're going to see if your story of your narrative matches your actions as an individual. But you do not have to have those things. They look good. They provide you with an experience that is very helpful in making a decision about being a physician, but they are not required.
The other related piece to that, Connie, and I agree with you 100% on that, is that whatever it is that your experience is and that you're utilizing, make sure that you're clear on how those experiences have informed also your awareness of the practice of medicine. It does not mean that you have to do clinical hours in a hospital or volunteer, but whatever it is that you do should inform why medicine is the route you want to choose to pursue what it is you do. Because if you tell me, right, during an interview, well, I did this work and it's because I really want to serve underserved communities and I want to address this and that, my question will be likely, well, you know what, you could do that as a nurse, you could do that as a physician assistant, you can do that as a social worker. What is it particularly about medicine and the practice of medicine, right, that makes that the choice for you professionally? Because there's many routes to be of service to community. So how do you gather that information in those specifics, particularly those of you who don't, for whatever reasons, have access? Interviews, talks, panels, participating, asking questions, right? Gather that information, reading testimonials, whatever it is that informs your awareness of what the practice of medicine is. And one of the questions that we might ask is, what do you know about kind of the outlook of medicine? What are some of the biggest challenges you know that are facing doctors right now? Because if you don't have any sense of what the challenges are in medicine, right, then you really haven't done your awareness. You're not sure what you're getting yourself into. And that could be anything from issues around access and insurance or whatever it may be. And these experiences may even come from your own family experiences. And those are incredibly important and valid because those are your own. Nobody can take those away from you. And if you want to use those as examples, right, of why this empowers you and why this impassions you, that's great. But don't let that be your only reasons, right? Because you want to be able to augment and enrich that with whatever kind of extracurricular or professional development or other personal experiences that you've pursued.
All right, and our next question, I believe we covered this, but I will ask it again. If I retake a class for a better grade, which grades get calculated in GPA?
Both. Remember that GPA is a calculation of your letter grade in units. So that's why when you enter your information, you'll see that it asks how many credits, and then, and then it'll tell you, and then you put in your grade. And that calculation is done automatically for you on that GPA calculator. That's why we always tell students they should try to make sure that they calculate their real GPA before they are ready to apply.
And next question, I believe Kelechi did cover this.
Okay.
I'm a first-year student. Is it too early to ask for letters of recommendation now?
Yes. I love your enthusiasm though. You know what's a wonderful thing for first-year students to do? To find a professor that really, really speaks to their desire for higher education, right? And that could be in any field. It could be somebody in the biology department or somebody in chemistry. It could be somebody in English or history or political science. Because then if you take a sequence with that faculty member and you listen to Kelechi and go to office hours and talk to the faculty member and make appointments, then this faculty member has very rich information about who you are, not just as a student, but as a person and as a professional. And that's going to be a dynamic, awesome letter of recommendation. Okay, so if you're a first-year student and you're on this call, think about who of the faculty members you've taken has just really excited you and has motivated you to kind of go that extra step and study extra hard and get really involved in the material. And if they have a secondary class or if they have an upper division class that you can take next year, take it. You know, that's how you build rapport with faculty, and those are going to be your greatest letters of recommendation. And if they're not a science faculty member, that's okay, because it's always good to have at least one letter of recommendation from a non-science faculty member in your pool of letters for medical school.
And then on that same track of recommendations, we have a question. Can your recommendations be from boss or a coworker instead of teachers?
You know, each school is a little different. Most of the time, it should not be from a coworker, the same way that the letter should not be from a TA, but it should be from a faculty member. If you if you're part of a community organization and you've been working with them for a long time and now you have a leadership position, then yes, you can get a letter from a supervisor, as long, you know, it could be the director, it can be the CEO, and you can have it again in your file of recommenders. And if a school wants a community letter, you have it. Not everyone will ask for it, but it's a good thing to have in your at your disposal.
Okay, next question. I'm currently a junior. I'm not done with my credits. Will I have to wait until I graduate to complete the application?
Again, and this is so, you know, I did a lot of advising for post-bac students at UCSF, and that's all about a year of getting your application ready, okay? If you are and I'll repeat what I said previously, if you're a senior in college, there is no rush and there is no need for you to feel like you have to apply to medical school while you are a senior in college. Applying to medical school is like a half-time job. And then you have interviews, which becomes a full-time job. So it takes a lot of time and preparation, and your focus should be on a strong graduation from college. Okay, your focus should be getting that 4.0 and finishing college strong. Remember that the average age for medical school is when they're coming out, right?
Connie? Did she stop for you guys too?
Yeah.
She
You
froze.
do not have to apply to see.
Connie, can you repeat that, those last couple of statements, because you did freeze and I don't think.
Did I freeze
You froze.
like that?
Yes,
Okay.
in a much
Where
better
did I
place.
freeze, Tomas?
Something around the GPA, something, I think you recommend, like an average GPA perhaps, or something. I'm not sure where she, you guys.
Where did I freeze? No, so basically, you should be enjoying your senior year. You should make sure that you get the best GPA that you can. Do not feel rushed, because then you're gonna have your last year of college where you're studying to end strong, and you have to study for the MCAT. Why would anybody want to do that to themselves? You know what I mean? It is not a requirement, and you should not feel rushed to apply to medical school. Getting experience, working in a clinic, volunteering in a hospital for a year after, for the year after you graduate is a really wonderful way to show that you've really thought about this as a career.
All right, Michael Perez has their hand up, so I will allow Michael to talk. Michael, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my question is, I understand that it's important that whoever writes your letters of recommendation, that they know you very well, obviously can testify to what type of provider you will be. But my question is, would it be appropriate if we have someone who is a physician assistant write for us, even though we're going to be applying to MD and DO programs?
Do you want me to comment on that, Connie?
Yeah,
Yes. Yes, look, it does not necessarily need to be a physician who needs to write that letter. It is anybody who is familiar with the medical care delivery system and the artistry of the practice of medicine can comment on the skills and the abilities you have to connect with people, your motivation, your curiosity, your thirst for knowledge, right? Whatever it is, those skill sets that you bring to any encounter, as long as that person has enough intimate experience with you, right, to comment thoughtfully and accurately on it, and even better, relate it to the care of people in any profession, right? That will certainly benefit from you. And I would much rather see a letter written like that from somebody who is not an MD than somebody who has an MD behind their name and can only give me a very superficial, right, assessment of who you are. That offers me nothing other than it says to me that you kind of worked with a physician. But clearly, it wasn't a very deep interaction because they didn't really have much to say about you. It's kind of like choosing who you do for your academic letter. So anybody who has any knowledge of kind of the care of human beings within kind of a health situation can and write a very strong letter for you is worth the investment in getting that. Does that help, Michael?
Awesome. Yes, that is exactly what I was hoping to hear. It's just that in the past, yeah, some people have tried to, hit me with that logic of, oh, if it's an MD program, they want to hear from MDs. But, that was just affirming my stance on like, no, I think it's more about, them knowing you better as a person than just what letters are behind their name. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Yeah, but in a situation, so similar to what Connie said, right? If you're in a clinical encounter where it is a team and the physician is part of that team, but you've worked closer with the MA, one option might be that this could be a combined joint letter, right? That the PA can inform the majority of the narrative, but then the MD can sign off on it unauthentically. So it does come from an MD. And yes, of course, there are certain biases with certain admissions committee members, right? That if it's a very strong letter and written by an MD versus a very strong letter written by a non-MD, there might be some bias towards that MD letter. But again, it's about the quality of the letter in and of itself. So the best what I often do in certainly when my practice is that when we're precepting students and my colleague who is an NP has worked predominantly with that student, but they really want an MD letter, I will write that letter in concert with my NP. So we're both informing it, but I may sign off on it. So, but not everybody has that option, Michael. So the point is you want as strong a letter as possible.
Understood. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Michael, for your question. Next question, staying on theme of letter of rec. Is there anything different about the process of asking for and getting letters of rec for students who plan on taking a gap year?
Kelechi?
So at the beginning, is there anything different in the process?
Yes, is there anything different about the process of asking for and getting letters of rec for students who plan on taking a gap year?
No, I think probably the most important thing is that you ask or at least put the feeler out there while you are still in the fresh memory of the letter writer. It's really challenging to have someone come 4 years later and say, hey, I took your class 5 years ago, can you write me a letter of rec? So if you know that this is someone that you plan to ask for a letter of rec, even if you just sort of present it to them and then kind of work with them to see what they say. Some people will say, you know what, I'll just write the letter now and we can just update it and tweak it a bit when you're ready to apply. then that could particularly be one option. But I definitely wouldn't wait too long to ask people, because you want to do it while you're still fresh in their memory, which is why it's also important just to stay in touch with people. And that doesn't have to be anything, monumental. You can just send a professor or whoever it may be an email at the end of every semester, updating them on what's happening. Like, I love getting those emails from students, and no, they're not bothersome. Just don't email every other day or anything, but you can give them updates, at the end of every semester, let them know how you're doing so they don't forget about you.
Yeah, let me make a note on kind of the graciousness of being a recipient of letters, guys, right? Not only is there kind of graciousness around giving those who you've asked to write a letter of you enough time to actually submit, and making sure that you ask a letter of those who really feel qualified to answer. But please do respect the fact that they have done this for you. And we are curious to know what the outcome is of this effort that we've invested in you. So I can say that in the many, many, many letters of recommendation I have written, I could probably put on one or two hands the number of times those students have actually followed up with me to let me know what happened. What was the outcome, right? Whether it be a positive one or a negative one. Those students will stand out. I'll remember those, because if come 3 years down the line, they ask me for another letter for anything, I'm going to remember that, they really, really honored kind of this relationship that we're developing, this professional relationship. So please send letters of thank you after a letter is submitted, and then let them know about the outcome, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
Okay, next question. Right now, many experiences are being held virtually, for example, shadowing. Is virtual shadowing regarded as lesser than if the experience was in person? Or does it matter more about the impact of the experience rather than the setting?
So I just want to make sure that people understand a clarification about shadowing. So shadowing is a great first experience to what happens in a clinical setting. It is a passive activity. You're not really learning so much as observing something with a physician or a dentist or a pharmacist, whoever it is that you're shadowing, because you can shadow anybody you want to see kind of what it looks like as they work, okay? Filling your activities with one-off shadowing does not show that you're serious about medicine. It shows that you had lots of opportunities to shadow physicians or PAs or anybody else. What you want to do is, if you are shadowing for information on whether this is a good fit for you or not, that then you go deeper. And you did the shadowing, and now you're going to be a clinical research coordinator, or now you're going to be part of a lab that has to do with that shadowing experience because you want to research it further. Or now you, because of that shadowing experience, you're going to do a specialized summer program based on what you saw. So think very carefully about why you're shadowing, who you're shadowing, and how that can lead you to a deeper experience. A lot of students think that they have to shadow, and you don't, because shadowing, again, is very passive. You are an observer. If you're scribing, now you're working directly and you are a very important part of a physician's team, because you're taking notes. You are listening to what the doctor is saying. You are writing down what she's talking about. You are writing down what diagnosis was given and how the patient is going to follow up. That also gives you an opportunity to meet with the physician to talk, why did you diagnose this way? What led you to go down this road, right? That's a very in-depth type of activity. And it could lead you to either love it or think twice. Maybe I don't want to get that involved in somebody's business, right? It gives you that opportunity. So if you have the opportunity to scribe, that is a very, very rich experience, especially if you're a senior, if you're taking a year off. Normally scribing positions pay pay a salary that's good enough. A clinical research coordinator, even if you don't have research experience, a scribe position and a clinical research coordinator, they give you exposure to patient contact, right? Because now you're working with patients, and even if you're just taking down histories. So think about those types of activities. And yes, things are virtual. Somebody else asked about, well, there's not a lot of volunteer opportunities available because we have this shelter in place. Yes, we do. But a lot of community-based organizations still have contact with their clients and their patients. And now that we are in the phase of vaccines, there's a lot of need for volunteers to help people get appointments, to understand the process of making an appointment, to interpret at appointments, to make sure that people understand, how to get signed up, et cetera. So our community, San Francisco is rich in community-based organizations, and all you have to do is look on their websites to see if there's something that interests you and to see what kinds of opportunities they have, what kinds of needs they have for help. They will always provide, PPE. So you just we need to think outside the box. They're not going to look the same as before. You're not going to be sitting behind a desk, pushing people in the hospital to their appointments or taking them to their doctor's appointment. But there are other ways that we can volunteer. And being able to show that on your application really shows perseverance and shows a desire to help when things were so difficult in our community.
Okay, I'm gonna take one more live question. Alex, you have your hand raised. Alex Atencio, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, I apologize. I'm going to allow you to talk. So go ahead and ask your question.
No, that's correct. Thank you. It's Alex Atencio.
Oh, Alex, can you try speaking again?
Would you guys that aren't requiring, recommend applying to medical schools that aren't that don't accept the MCAT this application session? Because a lot of them are waiving it due to COVID.
I was under the, I was told that they waived it for this current cycle, but that they're back to normal for the next cycle.
Oh, okay. I know there's still some that are doing it. It's just a case-by-case basis.
Correct.
But what are your guys' thoughts on that?
What do you mean? If a school accepts it, if a school requires it, you have to submit it. If they don't require it, then you don't have to submit it. But if there's one school that you want to apply to and they are requiring the MCAT, that means that you have to submit the MCAT to your file, to your AMCAS, and that gets shown to all the schools that you're applying to.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, was that your only question, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we are at 3:26. We're coming to the end here. I know we still have a lot of open questions that people would probably like answers to. Is there any way that we can get some of these questions answered later on? Or if students have additional questions that they want to ask, is there any specific person you want them to contact? I'm always someone that people can contact, and I can direct questions when necessary.
So I would say probably the best strategy would be to reach out to Brianna with questions, and she'll do her best to find answers for you. Neither Brianna or I are in the health field, but we will do our best to at least direct you to the right person or find answers. No guarantees, but we'll do our best. I don't want to put this on any of our other panelists, as they are super duper busy, and we were lucky to get them here today, but I don't want to fill up their email boxes if it's questions that we can handle on our own.
And remember that the AAMC, again, the AAMC website has all the answers to the questions that you're asking, because they're the ones that are in charge of getting your application, of making sure that the schools you selected get your application. They're the ones in charge to make sure that you have the fee assistance waiver information, which, by the way, I believe you can start applying to in February. So the application is open now. Those answers are all on that AAMC website. You should, if you, when you go to the AAMC website, sign up for their pre-health newsletter or listserv. They have conferences, they have webinars, they go through each part of the application. It's super useful. And a lot of students, will say, oh, I'm just gonna ask Brianna. And then, Brianna has to go and talk to people. And when the best thing for you to do is go on the AAMC website. And then if you can't find the answer, then ask Brianna to give you a hand. But all the information you want is really going to be on that website. They have also great tools to help you organize yourself before you apply to medical school. So, kind of step by step, what you should be doing as a freshman, what you should be doing as a sophomore, junior, senior, etc., so that you are touching on all the points that we discussed today. So I can't stress that enough. Get yourself signed up to the pre-health AAMC website. Take your time in applying to medical school. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Only apply when you're ready, and that includes that you are happy with your MCAT score. And this is your journey, it's nobody else's. No, it's not a one size fits all, and you have to be 100% content with where you are academically, emotionally, and spiritually before you apply to med school.
I'll add on to that. I'll put in a plug that we have a course called Science 239, or SCI 239, in which Armand Kirakosian, who is a practicing podiatrist, is teaching about pre-health professions, including the application process. So that course is going to be offered every semester. Brianna just put it in the chat, and please consider signing up for that. He also teaches anatomy. He's just a beloved instructor, so I think you'll really get a lot out of this course.
And that's the kind of information you all should be looking for. There's a course that he teaches this one, and then he's going to be teaching anatomy. What a great class for you to have on your transcript for med school. So now you've had two opportunities to work with this professor and then find out what else he's teaching. And there you have, kind of a mixed approach to interacting with a faculty member that can write. Then hopefully you do well and you're able to get a really strong letter of recommendation. Gosh, Laura, if I had known that, I might have become a doctor,
Well, we just activated it this semester, so or reactivated
wonderful.
it. It was on the books before, but we decided there was so much need for this kind of advising that we wanted to reactivate this course. So please know that it's available to you. And because it is at time, and I know our panelists are hugely busy, I want to thank them once again for taking their time to share this really amazing information with everybody. Your wisdom and insights are just so important. I want to thank Brianna for planning this webinar, and she has stepped in as a biology undergraduate specialist, and little did she know she was going to become our kind of pre-health expert. So we've kind of foisted on this on her, but she has done wonderfully. And I want to thank you all for coming, because this is the first step when you take this into your own hands. What information can I find? How can I invest in this myself? What can I find out? And so this is a great step. And we look forward to staying in conversation and hearing about your successes going forward. All right, so take care, everybody, and be safe and be well.
Thank you
And
so
get
much
vaccinated.
for having us. And Brianna, I look forward to future collaborations, okay?
Yes.
Yes, that'd be great.
From me.
Thank you so much. I tried to answer as many questions in the Q&A.
As did I. Yeah, thank you, Kalechi.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.